house. There was, so far as I knew, only one student of adventurous blood at St. Agatha's, and I was not in the least surprised to see, on the little sheltered balcony of the boathouse, the red tam-o'-shanter. She wore, too, the covert coat I remembered from the day I first saw her from the wall. Her back was toward me as I drew near, her hands were thrust into her pockets. She was evidently enjoying the soft mingling of the snow with the still blue waters of the lake, and a girl and a snowstorm are, if you ask my opinion, a pretty combination. The fact of a girl's facing a winter storm argues mightily in her favor, testifies, if you will allow me, to a serene and dauntless spirit, for one thing, and a sound constitution for another. I ran up the steps, my cap in one hand, her overshoe in the other. She drew back a trifle, just enough to bring my conscience to its knees. I didn't mean to listen that day. I just happened to be on the wall, and it was a thoroughly underbred trick, my twitting you about it, and I should have told you before, if I'd known how to see you. "May I trouble you for that shoe?" she said with a great deal of dignity. They taught that cold disdain of man, I supposed, as a required study at St. Agatha's. "Oh, certainly. Won't you allow me?" "Thank you, no." I was relieved, to tell the truth, for I had been out of the world for most of that period in which a youngster perfects himself in such graces as the putting on of a girl's overshoes. She took the damp bit of rubber. A wet overshoe, even if small and hallowed by associations, isn't pretty, as Venus might have received a soft-shell crab from the hand of a fresh young merman. I was between her and the steps, to which her eyes turned longingly. "Of course, if you won't accept my apology, I can't do anything about it, but I hope you understand that I'm sincere and humble and anxious to be forgiven." "You seem to be making a good deal of a small matter." "I wasn't referring to the overshoe," I said. She did not relent. "If you'll only go away—" She rested one hand against the corner of the boathouse while she put on the overshoe. She wore, I noticed, brown gloves with cuffs. "How can I go away? You children are always leaving things about for me to pick up. I'm perfectly worn out carrying some girl's beads about with me, and I spoiled a good glove on your overshoe." "I'll relieve you of the beads, too, if you please." And her tone measurably reduced my stature. She thrust her hands into the pockets of her coat and shook the tam-o'-shanter slightly, to establish it in a more comfortable spot on her head. The beads had been in my corduroy coat since I found them. I drew them out and gave them to her. "Thank you very much." "Of course they are yours, miss—" She thrust them into her pocket. "Of course they're mine," she said indignantly, and turned to go. "We'll waive proof of property and that sort of thing," I remarked, with, I fear, the hope of detaining her. "I'm sorry not to establish a more neighborly feeling with St. Agatha's. The stone wall may seem formidable, but it's not of my building. I must open the gate. That wall's a trifle steep for climbing." I was amusing myself with the idea that my identity was a dark mystery to her. I had read English novels in which the young lord of the manor is always mistaken for the gamekeeper's son by the pretty daughter of the curate, who has come home from school to be the belle of the county. But my lady of the red tam-o'-shanter was not a creature of illusions. "It serves a very good purpose. The wall, I mean, Mr. Glenarm." She was walking down the steps and I followed. I am not a man to suffer a lost schoolgirl to cross my lands unattended in a snowstorm, and the piazza of a boathouse is not, I submit, a pleasant loafing place on a winter day. She marched before me, her hands in her pockets. I liked her particularly that way, with an easy swing and a light and certain step. Her remark about the wall did not encourage further conversation, and I fell back upon the poets. "Stone walls do not a prison make, nor iron bars a cage," I quoted. Quoting poetry in a snowstorm while you stumble through a woodland behind a girl who shows no interest in either your prose or your rhymes has its embarrassments, particularly when you are breathing a trifle hard from the swift pace your auditor is leading you. "I've heard that before," she said, half turning her face, then laughing as she hastened on. Her brilliant cheeks were a delight to my eye. The snow swirled about her, whitening the crown of her red cap, and clung to her shoulders. Have you ever seen snow crystals gleam, break, dissolve in fair, soft, storm-blown hair? Do you know how a man will pledge his soul that a particular flake will never fade, never cease to rest upon a certain flying strand over a girlish temple? And he loses, his heart and his wager, in a breath. If you fail to understand these things, and are furthermore unfamiliar with the fact that the color in the cheeks of a girl who walks abroad in a driving snowstorm marks the favor of heaven itself, Then I waste time, and you will do well to rap at the door of another inn." "I'd rather missed you," I said, "and really I should have been over to apologize if I hadn't been afraid." "Sister Theresa is rather fierce," she declared, "and we're not allowed to receive gentlemen callers. It says so in the catalogue." "So I imagined. I trust Sister Theresa is improving?" "Yes, thank you." "And Miss Devereux, is she quite well, I hope?" She turned her head as though to listen more carefully, and her step slackened for a moment. Then she hurried blithely forward. "Oh, yes, she's always well, I believe." "You know her, of course?" "Oh, rather. She gives us music lessons." "So Miss Devereux is the music teacher, is she? Should you call her a popular teacher?" "The girls call her," she seemed moved to mirth by the recollection, "Miss Prim and Prosy." "Ugh!" I exclaimed sympathetically. "Tall and hungry looking, with long talons that pound the keys with grim delight. I know the sort." "She's a sight," and my guide laughed approvingly. "But we have to take her. She's part of the treatment." "You speak of St. Agatha's as though it were a sanatorium." "Oh, it's not so bad. I've seen worse." "Where do most of the students come from? All what you call Hoosiers?" "Oh, no. They're from all over. Cincinnati, Chicago, Cleveland, Indianapolis." "What the magazines call the Middle West." "I believe that is so. The bishop addressed us once as the flower of the Middle West, and made us really wish he'd come again." We were approaching the gate. Her indifference to the storm delighted me. Here, I thought in my admiration, is a real product of the Western world. I felt that we had made strides toward such a comradeship as is proper should exist between a schoolgirl in her teens and a male neighbor of 27. I was, going back to English fiction, the young squire walking home with the curate's pretty young daughter and conversing with fine condescension. "We girls all wish we could come over and help hunt the lost treasure. It must be simply splendid to live in a house where there's a mystery, secret passages, and chests of doubloons and all that sort of thing. My, Squire Glenarm, I suppose you spend all your nights exploring secret passages." This free expression of opinion startled me, though she seemed wholly innocent of impertinence. "Who says there's any secret about the house?" I demanded.
"Oh, Ferguson, the gardener, and all the girls."
"I fear Ferguson is drawing on his imagination."
"Well, all the people in the village think so. I've heard the candy shop woman speak of it often."
"She'd better attend to her taffy," I retorted.
"Oh, you mustn't be sensitive about it. All us girls think it ever so romantic, and we call you sometimes the Lord of the Realm, and when we see you walking through the darkling wood at evenfall, we say, 'My lord is brooding upon the treasure chests.'" This, delivered in the stilted tone of one who is half quoting and half improvising, was irresistibly funny, and I laughed with good will. "I hope you've forgiven me," I began, kicking the gate to knock off the snow and taking the key from my pocket. "But I haven't, Mr. Glenarm. Your assumption is, to say the least, unwarranted. I got that from a book."
"It isn't fair for you to know my name and for me not to know yours," I said leadingly.
"You're perfectly right. You are Mr. John Glenarm, the gardener told me, and I'm just Olivia. They don't allow me to be called Miss yet. I'm very young, sir."
"You've only told me half." And I kept my hand on the closed gate. The snow still fell steadily, and the short afternoon was nearing its close. I did not like to lose her. The life, the youth, the mirth for which she stood, the thought of Glenarm House amid the snow-hung wood and of the long winter evening that I must spend alone, moved me to delay. Lights already gleamed in the school buildings straight before us, and the sight of them smote me with loneliness.
"Olivia Gladys Armstrong," she said laughing,
brushed past me through the gate, and ran lightly over the snow toward St. Agatha's. End of Chapter 9.